Good afternoon, everyone. And as Kisha said, food is very delicious today. I hope you did enjoy. So to start with, our session today is about green sustainability, enhancing sustainability through green buildings in Egypt. And we have Dr. Salah ElHaggar, Director of Egypt Building Council and Professor at the American University in Egypt. And we do have Dr. Hend Farouh, Professor of Environment and Sustainable Urban Development, and also consultant at the Ministry of Housing. Welcome. So to start with, would you like to present? Dr. Salah, please. حضرتك يا دكتور الأول تفضل. أوكي، تفضلي.
Hello again, everyone. After this delicious food, I will just fly with some of the slides regarding the green building and the sustainable cities and what is actions on the ground and what is our future and what we want to tell to our kids and our children. Like each said, I will start from the strategy of climate change strategy of Egypt, which has in its core the green building and sustainable community. And recently, Egypt announced the establishment of Egyptian Green Building Council and Sustainable Cities with the head of the Minister of Housing and Urban Communities, which is a very good step to start forward in implementation. And some of the actions I would like, I already presented this morning, the green social housing finance, but here I will stop on the what is the idea behind the green permit rating system, because we are tackling the quality of life with the energy and water and material efficient resources, because this is the balance that we want to have. Access
Dr.
to
Hend,
services.
Dr. Hend, you could speak slowly. We are not in a competition anymore.
Tuned.
You are not in a competition anymore. You could speak slowly.
So when we are talking about the urban planning and design, it's very important that we are focusing on the access to community services, the access to transportation, public transportation in all of our green living cities and communities, the health and well-being, and how we have quality control of indoor environmental quality and the thermal comfort and daylighting. Very important issue is management. For the first time that we are focusing in our rating system on management. We are talking about the periodical maintenance check. We are talking about the separation of household waste. We are talking about the building user guide and how to educate our citizens to have their green living style. Some of our projects, beside the green social housing, which is our key project, for the private sector, for example, we have the Commercial International Bank, CIP Bank. This is existing building that has we finished retrofitting to become a green bank in Egypt, starting from the sustainable side till the management, integrating PV in the facade, integrating grey water for the flushing and also for the landscape. Another building as well for the CIP. After the success story of the first building, the bank started to convert other buildings and branches to be sustainable. One of the key projects here in Egypt is the Grand Egyptian Museum, and we all of us looking forward to invite you again to come again and to visit the Grand Egyptian Museum in the presidential opening. And we finalized the evaluation of the Grand Egyptian Museum with the HBRC to be the first museum green in Egypt. the green social housing. I will just stop on the reality, the photo that I didn't have the time to present in the morning. And here we can see the future of our kids. You can see the bicycle lanes. This is the planning of the lanes, and this is the reality. This is where we already, the Social Housing Fund were able to implement it by the table, by the number of lanes, the fund for each lane, and the ending and the starting date to establish such quality of life. The landscape and the greening of the area, because this is the quality of living that we are looking for, and selecting of the plants itself to be to bear the high temperature and use the minimum water use. As you know that Egypt right now after the under the poverty line of water. Services, as I mentioned, it's very important. Before constructing the building, we should take care of services, nursery, schools, bakery, all the daily services that the citizens are in need, and you will see it tomorrow in our site visit. And this is the first photo for the first social housing unit under the umbrella of green that was finished, and it will host us tomorrow, inshallah. And always, I want to, this is our, let's say, cover photo that we can see this girl have her bicycle safely, enjoying the quality of life and the green area in the this new city, the gardening capital. I will finalize with one of the projects regarding integrating solar system in all the different sectors in the residential, commercial, public sector, tourism sector, industrial, because this is the future, and this is the future of Africa. The Egypt PV is implementing by the Industrial Modernization Center and UNDP, and the main issue is to integrate solar system in all these sectors all over Egypt, and we succeeded to implement 141 solar system in 16 governorates all over Egypt, with total of 14.6 megawatt. An iconic project like Cairo International Airport. All of you will travel from Cairo International Airport. You will see the charger stations for your laptop and mobile station as it takes its energy from the rooftop solar station, Sharm Airport and the economic court, and also the hospitals. Cancer Hospital and Shifa Al-Orman Hospitals and Sharm el-Sheikh, the Convention Center, who joined the COP, I for sure managed to see such facility banner and such intervention for solar system in the airports and in the convention centers and in different other factories, tourism sector, hotels, public sector, and the residential sector. We managed to integrate it in compounds in 2 new cities, 6th of October and Sheikh Zayed, and now we are working on the green social housing. Last but not least, the new administrative capital, which will be there in our site visit, and you will see that it was really part of our green cities or smart green cities that we are working on, not only in solar, but in the IT, in the building envelope, in the water harvesting, and many sustainable features. I will finalize my presentation that Egypt PV project succeeded to be the winner of the Low Carbon Award of the AIA Award, which is one of the prestigious awards from the British Institute in 2020. Not because it's the best project, because we have with the short list very good projects from Emirates and from other countries, but because the replicability, the ability to be replicated in other countries in the MENA region and in Africa. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hend. Now we are with Dr. Salah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hala, and good afternoon, everybody. Can I get the presentation, please?
Yes, yes.
No problem. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now, today, inshallah, I'm going to take you to a quick tour about the history of green building worldwide. Okay, first, I will talk about the objective of the presentation, followed a brief introduction about net zero, especially. And then I will talk about the Egyptian green building rating system called Tarsheet, and then I will conclude my presentation. Now, the objective is to present the core concept of the link between green building and climate change. And that's a very important point here. And then I would present the core concept of Egypt green building rating system and communities as well. Now, as all of you know, the green sector is a major contributor to greenhouse gases. A green sector or building sector contribute about 40% to the greenhouse gases, because most people try to say in the transportation and industrial, they contribute to greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, building sector is much more contributor to greenhouse gases than transportation and industry. Just to give you a history about how the green building started. In 1990, the International Energy Agency indicated that the world primary energy needs will grow by 55% by 2030, which require about $22 trillion of investment, which is behind the expected budget of any country, developed or developing countries. And they tried to do some more analysis, and they found in the buildings consume about 43%, industrial consume about 37%, agriculture consume energy about 4%, and government and public utilities consume about 17%, which means in the building sector consumes a huge amount of energy. And therefore, they found and there is a need for some initiative to reduce the first greenhouse gases, second to reduce the energy consumption, and this initiative was called green buildings. And the first country worldwide that started green building is UK. In 1990, United Kingdom, they developed or they initiated the first green building rating system called BREEAM, and right now there is about 600,000 buildings green in UK. 8 years later, United States, they started with LEED. Right now, they say they have 8 rating systems, but the first one was LEED, and LEED is very famous worldwide, by the way. And if you try to see statistically, in the United States, there is 1.6 million green building certified with LEED in the United States. And there is about 40,000 shopping malls certified with LEED, and the most important part, there is more than 200,000 green experts, which means in the green building can also provide a lot of job opportunities. In Egypt, we have 4 rating systems. We have, LEED is already implemented in Egypt. We have HBRC, we have H, and we have H, we have HBRC, and Tarsheet. We have 4 rating systems in Egypt. Now, in 2012, we established Egypt Green Building Council, which is under the umbrella of Ministry of Social Solidarity. Our main mission is to have, green rating system, very simple, affordable, and cost-effective, and the most important part is practical to be implemented. But before we get into that, this slide here from the World Green Building Council, because again, Egypt Green Building Council, it is under the umbrella of the World Green Building Council. World Green Building Council says, and green building can contribute to 9 sustainable development goals out of 17. That's number one. Number two, it can reduce the amount of energy up to 40%, up to 50%, and the amount of CO2 emissions by 40%, the water consumption by 40%, and the waste can be reduced by 70%, which means it's a major contributor to conserving the natural resources. In 2015, I authored a book called Sustainability and Innovation, the Next Global Industrial Revolution. This is the first book worldwide talks about net zero in general. When I say net zero in general, I mean net zero water, net zero energy, net zero waste, net zero emission, and net zero neutral carbon emissions, which has all these details in chapter 3 of that book. I think it is the only book until today talks about the concept of net zero as the next industrial revolution. Until last year, in COP26, when United Nations, they initiated the net zero concept to be implemented all over the world, and by 2050, we should have net zero emission worldwide. Now, when we talk about net zero green strategy in general means in equal out, means all emissions and waste has to be utilized. Just quickly, net zero waste strategy, it's exactly the same as cradle to cradle. If you are familiar with the cradle to cradle, developed in 2001, where we are going to recycle 100% of our waste. And that some people call it, net zero waste, or sometimes call it zero waste or circular economy. Net zero water strategy, mainly we have 3 main elements in the net zero water strategy, which is water saving devices, gray water utilization, and black water utilization. Of course, I will try to go quickly about this net zero concept because this is a very important worldwide to save our natural resources. Net zero energy strategy means you are producing enough energy to run the building. We have one building, we have a number of buildings. So far, I think we have almost 10 buildings with net zero energy worldwide. But we have one building in United Arab Emirates, which is net positive energy building, where they generate more energy than use to run the building, and the rest, they sell it to the municipality. Of course, net zero emission strategy, that is at COP26, as already discussed in COP26 as well as COP27. Now, so far worldwide, there is 10 rating systems worldwide where they address the concept of net zero in the rating system, and Tarshid is one of them. Now, Tarshid rating system, it is very, as I mentioned before, it is very simple rating system for buildings and communities. It mainly consists of 3 main elements: water, energy, and habitat. Other than water and energy, it's included within the habitat category. Now, in 2015, we issued the Tarshid Affordable Buildings, and Tarshid Affordable Buildings was already developed in 2014 and published, and it's available in the old bookstores in 2015. Again, it's very simple and very cost-effective and simple to implement. And then in 2018, after I authored the book about net zero, then we decided as Egypt Green Building Council to have a rating system based on net zero. And then in 2018, we issued the Tarshid communities. But within Tarshid communities, there is a prerequisite called green building. And therefore, we decided to have also green building rating system based on net zero concept. And therefore, we already issued Tarshid schools, Tarshid commercial buildings, Tarshid residential buildings for existing and new buildings. And we are in the process to release Tarshid healthcare facilities. Tarshid is already based on 4 categories, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Depends on how many points you can collect. In the same time, within Tarshid rating system, there is a prerequisite, which I always feel prerequisite is very important to develop some kind of vision for the future regarding sustainability. That is the Tarshid communities, again, based on these 3 elements: energy, water, and habitat. And this is the energy scorecard, and I will not go through all these details. And this is the water scorecard, and this is the habitat scorecard. In conclusion, in conclusion, green buildings can contribute to 9 out of 17 sustainable development goals. That's number one. Number two, Tarshid rating system is very simple to implement and cost effective. One thing which we did this kind of a study about almost a year ago, the extra cost when you apply Tarshid affordable buildings is also, it ranges between 20 to 25,000 pounds, which is almost nothing. And therefore, it is based on logic and based on simple, innovative techniques to be implemented without any extra cost. One example, which we did it a few months ago, one of the rural villages in Aswan, called Farouh village, in cooperation with Ministry of Planning, we were able to convert it into green rural village. And this is the first rural village converted to green in Egypt, and I think worldwide, because when you talk about rural village, it's very difficult to be converted into green, but we were able to convert it, and they received the certificate just about a month ago, and during COP27, we celebrated with Ministry of Planning about issuing the Tarshid communities for Farouh rural community. In general, I always encourage to have all buildings to be converted into green, but in a very cost-effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salah. And please, is there any question? Do we have time? Yeah, is there any questions? The floor. So, somebody. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Regarding social housing in Egypt, in some of the countries that we've been analyzing social housing, for example in Morocco, the minimum units that you have to develop in an hectare is 240 units. In Senegal and Ivory Coast is 220. In Nigeria goes between 100 to 120. What is the minimum requirement per hectare per unit in the social housing schemes in Egypt, if there's a ratio that exists, or at least in the projects that you are developing?
This is not concerning green, this is concerning social housing in general. I think Dr. Mai Abdul Hamid, she's the best to answer your question.
Okay.
Typically, we build in large volumes. I mean, the number of applications we get for any call for applications we make is in thousands. But in some areas, you might have less demand. So I think the minimum would be 500 units to offer in a certain location, yani, so that you have economies of scale and you don't open up a site for such a smaller number of units. So I would say 500 units at least, but our typical projects, we have sites where we are building 40,000 units. The site we are going to visit tomorrow, I think, has around the number of units. The site where you've seen the cycling tracks and those things, it has around 35,000 units. Thank you.
Anybody else? So I have two questions, one for Dr. Hend and one for Dr. Salah. And we start with Dr. Hend. You mentioned that green social housing can reduce energy, also carbon dioxide emissions, water retention, solid wastes. Starting with solid wastes, how do you prepare sites for dealing with solid wastes, and how do we go through the procedures of collecting and Do we recycle or do we destroy, or what kind of steps you go to through this one?
Okay, this is a very interesting question, and this will be done through the partnership between the city council and the private companies that they are working on the collecting and the recycling. And the first step is the segregation from the beginning. For that, we put in the management the user guide and how the people and the citizen will be segregate their garbage from the origin, from the homes, and then you will find on the site the 3 bins for plastic, for paper and other organic solid waste, and then with this partnership between the city council and the private company, according to the tender that we are preparing right now, they will take this and recycle it, and then we will have this new cycle of solid and organic, let's say, comprehensive waste management in the new city.
Thank you. Dr. Salah, you mentioned to us so many, like 6 or 7 categories and certifications. That's LEED, AGE, Tarsheed, GPRS. What's the main difference between each one, and how should we go for one of them on which we could choose and say this is fit for this? You choose Tarsheed for rural areas. Why did you choose Tarsheed for rural areas and not the GPRS and not the AGE? Please.
Thank you for this very challenging question. I think it's very important. First of all, in the United States, there is 8 rating systems. The most famous rating system is LEED, where if you try to see statistically, there is 1.6 million buildings certified with LEED in the United States. In Egypt, we have LEED as well, but mainly LEED is a little bit expensive because it depends on some kind of importing some raw materials. And therefore, the multinational companies, they always prefer LEED other than national rating systems. Also, we have Tarsheed, but one thing which is very important, we have only 1 Tarsheed communities in Egypt, which is Tarsheed communities, and therefore, for Faris Village, our Ministry of Planning, they selected Tarsheed communities because that is the only Tarsheed communities in Egypt, and also we have another number of projects for Tarsheed communities. But selecting the rating system depends on 2 items: practicality and cost effective. And I think this is a very important, because again, as a developer, I always look for how much money I'm going to spend to have this certificate or other certificate. Another building right now we are working with, it is LEED and Tarsheed. So some buildings, they might select 2 rating systems. Like for example, in the United States, some buildings are LEED and WELL, because WELL and Fit Well, it is something called occupant rating system, not building rating system, and therefore depends on the developer and the knowledge and the awareness. I think what we need in Egypt, we need an awareness program to encourage people to select green rating systems, whatever the rating system is. Now in Egypt, we did not reach 100 buildings until today. We did not reach, with all these 4 rating systems, we did not reach 100 buildings certified with green. But we need some kind of an intensive program from the media, from the government, from the private sector, to encourage people to go into green. And this is a very important item, because again, building sector contribute heavily in COP27. In COP27, there is one presentation about the contribution of building sector in greenhouse gases. It is 41%. Sometimes we say 40%, but again, whether it's 40 or 40%, but it's a huge amount of contributing to greenhouse gas. And I think we should focus on converting all our buildings into green. One other advantage, which is very challenging, it is existing buildings. The way to convert existing buildings into green with minimum cost. Of course, the benefits, you are going to reduce the amount of energy by 30, 40%. You are going to reduce the amount of water by, maybe 40 to 50%. And by the way, we have two challenges right now. We are working on them in Egypt. One which will be net zero water, and another one will be net zero waste. And this, I consider them as very challenging to be implemented in Egypt. And if we will succeed on that, inshallah, I think we will be very pioneer in this net zero concept, because net zero is the future. Net zero is the future. It is very important to, understand what we mean by net zero. And that's what I wrote in this book about sustainability and innovation, the next global industrial revolution.
I just want to add from this point, because in this important conference, I think it's important to build on the presidential initiative for resilient and sustainable communities, which was announced in COP27 and attended by the ministers of housing from all the African countries. I think it's very important to have something from here to work on this initiative together as an African countries for our African citizens regarding the future green of Africa.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Salah. Thank you, Dr. Hend, and please welcome both. Thank you.